So for our purposes, we went through some of the ISC squared tenets for ethics earlier. I mean, we're going to just jump into more of them here in a few minutes, but right off the top of the head, talking about security investigations and what that might look like for purposes of your exam. So typically, we see these types of investigations that are in our business, and because of that, you as the CISSP, you might get called in. Maybe you already do. If law enforcement comes into to play, or somebody else needs help with something, you might actually they may lean on your expertise to come in and help with the incident handling, or some sort of investigation. And because of that, usually what we'll do is we'll typically break it up into these different types of investigations. So hopefully it's not a criminal investigation, but if it is, then you have to do what you have to do to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. One of the things that is for sure with any of these investigations is you're going to have to do typically what we call a root cause analysis. And that root cause analysis is super important because typically what we find is most of the time that's like trying to find a needle in the haystack. If you've ever done any of these before, the idea of the root cause analysis or the investigation is to find out how it happened, when it happened, what happened, and making sure that you try to prevent it from happening again. And because of that, it can be quite tricky, right? Because if somebody doesn't have the proper auditing turned on, or they're not logging specific things in their infrastructure, then it can be quite perplexing and to get down to the root of all evil that happened whenever you're looking into these investigations. So it can be quite tricky, but one thing is for sure. It's likely that you're going to have to be looking at network stack traces of, maybe some Wireshark TCP dumps, maybe some log files of Windows and Linux. You may be looking at a web server log files as well. And so to really get down into the details of, what is the root cause, and to have it be credible, you really have to figure out, in most of these, what was the patient zero? Like, when did it get infected? How did it get infected? Why did it get infected? And then keep non-repudiation intact. And so there's a whole bunch of different things that we need to do in order to make sure that it is preserved, right? And that it can be presented in court. And so you see a litany of different terms that you may see in the e-discovery shown up here on the screen. So for instance, making sure that the information that you have is well organized, you're governing it in a way that's meaningful. The identification is that it's, discovery happened, just in case it needs to be responsive. The preservation of it would be that it's, you're protecting it from any tampering or alteration of any kind, deleting of log files, those kinds of things. When you're collecting it, you need to make sure that you keep a chain of custody and intact. With processing it, it's important to make sure that you look for anything that is relevant, as opposed to just kind of giving everything that's available and overwhelming people. When you review it, you have to have the idea of if it is protected information. Like, some of this may actually be sensitive information, and because of that, you need to potentially protect it confidential, or just in case it's maybe attorney-client privilege, that kind of thing. When you're analyzing it, there's a bunch of different tools out there to do the analyzing of it. If it's digital forensics, you might look at one tool that we typically will utilize is called FTK. We also will use another one called autopsy to do the analysis. You guys may have heard of both of those before, and if not, that's okay. But that's the FTK is the forensic toolkit. The FTK is forensic toolkit. And then autopsy just kind of slices and dices a whole bunch of different things around for us. So that's a good tool as well. In addition here, the format has got to be in a way that you can share it with others. So, being able to produce it in a way that's meaningful. And then, if you display the information and you present it, you need to make sure that it is understood. That's one of the most difficult things with electronic discovery is, to the layperson who's not deep in the bowels like you may be, how can you break it down to layperson's terms where you can maybe successfully prosecute that crime. And so there's a whole bunch of different components that come into play. And these are kind of this right here that we talked about into a nutshell, right? So we have the identification, you preserve it, you collect it, you process, you review, you analyze, you produce it, and then present it. This is really it in a nutshell, how this reference model comes into play. Another thing to think about is the process of that. Typically, there's a 6-step process for this that is interesting. You identify it, you preserve it, you collect it, examine it, analyze it, and then finally present it. And in order for us to do that, you can see here that we have a little chart, and that chart is, what did we actually identify over here? How did we preserve it? What did we do in the collection phase here for each one of these? What did we do to examine? Those are the important things. And then what about the analysis? What do we do for that? And finally, the presentation of it, which is one of the most important. Anybody that's ever been involved in any type of incident before, you may know that typically we give one type of document that we give is a executive summary, and then another one may be a more detailed approach. And that executive summary has to be something that is an elevator pitch, for lack of a better way to think of it. So what are some of those things that you may do when you're going in and looking at that 6-step process? Well, imaging a disk. What does that mean? What does imaging a disk mean? What do you guys think? Put it into the chat window. What does imaging a disk mean? basically getting a forensic copy of the disk. Copying the disk is really what we're looking for. Is you know, a bitwise copy. Usually, you can do an image of a disk with FTK. The forensic toolkit is one of the best open source tools out there that you can actually get an image, quote unquote, an image of a disk. Another one is in Linux is the disk duplicator. Disk or DD is in Linux. That's a good bitwise copy in raw format that you could also use. You can actually reconstruct the history of how things happen on the network by looking at packet captures. We've been involved in over 30 incidents since COVID, and many times they don't have network logging or network packet captures even turned on. And so, you know, when we're going through and doing that, that may be a big deal, because how are you going to find a needle in the haystack if the haystack doesn't even exist? And so there was we helped with a large school district recover from a ransomware attack. And one of the issues that we ran up against very, very quickly was they didn't have any logging turned on. So on the network level, that can be very, very challenging to figure out how things happened. When did it come in? Which was patient zero? Those kinds of things. Making sure you have the chain of custody for the forensic analysis, and looking at different intrusions with data mining. Now, even more so than ever, we can use some business intelligence up against the data that was collected, and you put us in a position where maybe either with AI or some business intelligence, we can make the data much more meaningful. You know, some people that are in this business right here may not have to do anything with jumping into a trial, but if you do, then you know, hopefully the stuff that you do would hold up in court, right? Because that's important for you if you're the subject matter expert, actually testifying in front of people. Lastly, here, the being able to find hidden information on a disk might be quite challenging, but there are quite a bit of tools out there that you could use to attempt to do that. But each one of these takes time, and time is money. So imaging would be preservation. The timelines would be analysis. The securing the laptop would be preservation. The correlation of system intrusions would be analysis. Subject matter expertise would be presentation. And then the last one here would be examination. That just keeps popping away from me there real quick. That's interesting. So there's a bunch of different types of computer crimes that are out there, and you know, we went through some of them in our case studies, but a lot of them have to do with grudges. Maybe they're thrill seekers with hacktivism. You know, trying to get financial gain by attacking businesses, or being able to get blueprints to things by, you know, military and intelligence attacks. So there's quite a bit of different types of attacks that are out there whenever you're talking about investigation and ethics. So last one here, just to reiterate, the Code of Ethics preamble and the canons. Again, you will see these on the exam. I want to make sure that you're aware of these. So just keep those in mind. Make sure you go back and review them prior to the actual exam. And then the last thing is these 10 commandments of computer ethics. These are really some good practices that typically we recommend to people that are taking this course. It should not use a computer to harm people, not interfere with other people's computer work, snoop around in other people's files. You don't use a computer to steal, to bear false witness, not copy or use proprietary software for which you have not paid, right? That's a no-no. We talked about shrink wrap and some of the new software licensing models. In addition here, shall not use other people's computer resources without authorization or proper compensation. Shall not appropriate other people's intellectual output. How true is that? Thou shalt think about social consequences of the program you are writing or the system you are designing. And then lastly, always use a computer in ways to ensure consideration and respect for other humans.